Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 17 of The Avengers, written by Jed MacKay. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. Now this issue opens on the Impossible City with the team having a meeting following the Blood Hunt event. And during their meeting, Carol points out to the team that they need to talk about something important. They need to talk about their failure. A failure that the Black Panther respectfully disagrees with, because according to him they accomplished their task in several key areas. First, the sun was shining again. Second, the world is still spinning. Third, humanity, and the other thinking species they share the globe with survived and is thriving. And finally, they managed to defeat Varney and the rest of the vampires. Now, as you may have guessed, Carol saw it in a completely different way, because according to her, this should have never happened on their watch, because thousands of people have died. But see, this point was countered by Wanda, because she stated on the other hand, they saved billions, because this event was supposed to be an extinction-level event. Now usually a group of heroes would be happy about this, but Carol burst their bubble by saying stopping extinction-level events is what the Avengers do. And currently, they are supposed to be preparing for tribulation events, the same cataclysms Kang warned them about. Because up to this point, they have contained the Ashen Combine with a minimal loss of life, which was the first tribulation event by the title, The Fall of the Impossible City. And when it came to the second tribulation event, the Blood Hunt, or what Kang called it the Endless Night, they pulled it off, but with a much higher body count. Because according to Carol, if they want to call themselves Avengers, then they owe the world a duty, and having thousands dead instead of billions is a far cry from victory in her eyes. And to make things worse, Dr. Doom is now the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, Miles is now a vampire, and vampires are now able to walk in the daylight. So with her anger made clear, Carol stormed off and left her friends to think about what she said. Now as Tony set off to talk to her, Sam couldn't help but to agree with her and feel bad about it. So with that event playing out, we jump over to the southern United States in Florida at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, 1 week before the Blood Hunt event. And when we get there we see a nervous man standing afraid as a mysterious individual offers him a job. A job that required the man to bring a thumb drive to the local news in 10 days, and in return for his service, he'd be paid handsomely in advance. And the way the mysterious man was going to pay him was by giving him a giant solid gold nugget. So with the offer out there, the scared man asked if he could get in trouble for carrying out the job. To which the stranger replied by saying, "No, but it is something that the people deserve to know about." So with everything laid out, we see a small hint of who the mysterious man is. Now those who love comics should know who he is, but for the sake of the story, I'll leave it a mystery until the end. Now with that out there, we jump back to the current day, with Tony catching up with a depressed Carol. And during their interaction, Carol brings up how she feels guilt regarding everything, and how she always falls back into the same cycle. But see, this was something Tony was all too familiar with, because Tony was Carol's sponsor during her battle with addiction. So because he has experienced the same thing she is currently going through, he reminds her that guilt can be an addiction too, and she has to make sure she isn't trading one out for the other. So as the two heroes bond on the rooftop, we then transition over to the Black Panther talking to the Impossible City. Because out of all the members of the team, I feel like only the Black Panther and Sam are the only two to talk to it. And during their interaction, he asked how it was feeling following the Blood Hunt event. To which the city stated that it was frightened and hurt and the vampire Cruel compromised its systems badly. But more than that, the city was most scared of becoming a tool to a monster again, so to protect itself, its consciousness retreated, and it became a dumb thing, and the only voice it responded to was his commands, because through all the trauma, it knew him. Now this was something the Black Panther could relate with, because during the event, he was compromised too, and despite him being under the vampiric hypnosis, he tried to fight back and apologize for his actions. So with that point made, much like Carol, the city was also feeling its own form of guilt and started naming ways it could have helped. But the Black Panther, with no hesitation, placed his hand on the wall and reassured the city that it is an intelligent being who was badly hurt and traumatized by monsters in the past, and now again just recently, and because of that, its reaction was understandable. So with that out there, the Black Panther brings up how they need to prepare for the future, because as an Avenger, they will be targeted by a lot of enemies and monsters, like for example the Twilight Court. Now with that team name brought up, the city remembered that it wanted to talk to the Black Panther about just that team, because during their battle, it was terribly confused. Because during their battle with the Twilight Court, it didn't register any enemy combatants, so from its perspective, it didn't know who the Avengers were fighting against and its sensors could not perceive them at all. So with that shock laid out, we jumped over to Wanda asking Vision if he had seen Sam, and as she spoke to him, she couldn't help but to ask about the garden he had created. Now with his garden discovered, Vision states that this was just something the city and himself have been working on, because as synthetics, they both are fascinated by organic life, so they had created a garden in orbit. So with that out of the way, Wanda tells Vision that she values his counsel more than perhaps any other. And because of that, she wanted to know his thoughts on what Carol said. Because just like Carol, Wanda too grieves for those who were lost, but she doesn't see how self-flagellation helps the living of the dead. Now with the question posed, Vision replied by saying, even though Wanda knows him better than any other human, he still can't help but to agree with Carol. Because as a synthetic, despite the engram overlays that make up who he is, his core is machinery, and his mind is computational. And because of that, he could also see how Wanda is right, because thousands of lives lost is better than billions destroyed. But see, Vision strives to be more than machinery and computation. Vision tries to explore what makes him a person, an unknowable, vast, unquantifiable amount of data. So the thought of thousands of sets of similarly complex data lost, destroyed, and killed could be seen as anything other than a grave loss, a failure. So with that conversation over, we transition to some ruins on the Kuiper Belt near Pluto with a person overlooking everything. And during his narration, he states that this was his last resort, and he hoped to find lucidity there. For he thought that the drifts of methane snow would offer him a cold clarity, but he was wrong. Because there was no truth up there than was on Earth. So it was now up to him to destroy it. So with great power, he launched off the surface of the planet and took off toward Earth. Now speaking of Earth, we jump back over to Earth in Atlanta where we see Sam meeting with Storm. And when they get face to face, the first thing Sam tells Storm is that he wanted to ask her something for a while. But before he gets to that, he wants to go on a fly with her. Now this put a smile on Storm's face as the two of them flew over the city. And as they did that, Storm told Sam he looked troubled and how could she help? To which Sam replied that his stress is coming from Avengers business because they are trying to figure out if they have failed the world during the Blood Hunt event. Now at first, Storm was hesitant to weigh in on their business, but Sam assured her that he needed an outside perspective to help guide his outlook. So with that out there, Storm started to ask a series of questions to help come to a decision. The first question was, if there was any warning that they ignored, and second, did they fight back with any reservation? Now to both of those questions, the answer was no. So with that said, Storm came to the conclusion that the Avengers did all they could, and they shouldn't feel bad. Because it was a terrible time, but both Sam and her are no strangers to terrible times, because recently Storm has fought in a war on an alien world, aka Araco. Because Storm above most knows that winning often comes with losses. And the hard truth is that there are simply times when they cannot save everyone, but that does not mean they do not try, even if it means their blood is on the ground, even if it means your spirit is leaving your body. Because that is all the Avengers could do, that is all any of them could do. Now with that comment out there, Sam points out how it was a lot easier when he was Falcon than when he became Captain America. But that is when Storm replied by saying it's no small thing to wear a flag, for it carries meanings that are both good and bad. Now no matter how much Storm's statement made a point, Sam couldn't help but to still feel guilty. Because he believes as an Avenger they stand for every thinking being on the planet and not just humans, but synthetics, Atlanteans, lava men, moloids, and mutants. But at the end of the day, they have failed the mutant race. Because they should have never let Orchis get as strong as it did. But Storm responded by saying that Orchis outmaneuvered her entire species, so she don't know what the Avengers could have done. Now personally on a side note, I have to disagree with Storm, because in the Avengers tie-ins, the Avengers completely wrecked shop on the Sentinels and the team itself speaking out would have gone miles in the eyes of the people. But anyway, Sam goes on to say it doesn't matter because they are the Avengers and the warnings were there, and the team as a whole had reservations. Now these were the conditions for failure that Storm quoted him earlier, and to that Storm was not about to disagree with. So with that out there, Sam went on to say that the Avengers have to stand for mutants the same way they do for everyone else. And because of that they need mutant representation, they need a mutant voice. And Sam wanted Storm to be that voice, so with that said, Sam outstretched his hand as Storm looked on in shock. Now with that offer given, we then transition over to Florida in a news office with two employees talking together. And one of those two men was the same guy who received the thumb drive from the mysterious person 1 week before the Blood Hunt event. And while they spoke, the man stated that he got it from a hero in the desert, and he wanted to turn it on so the both of them could see it. And once they plugged it in, they were surprised by what they saw and immediately called for their manager because everyone is going to want to see this. So with that going down, we jump back to the city with Thor cooking on a fire pit while talking to the city. And following their brief conversation, the city plays an incoming transmission from Earth, and on said transmission, we see none other than Hyperion. And Hyperion starts off by introducing himself and claims to be the Earth's greatest hero that has saved it time and time again. And while he did that, he lived in a world that he thought was good, a world he thought made sense. So as he loved the world, he believed it loved him in return. But he soon realized the world was a lie, and everything he knew and everything he had done was a lie as well. Now at this part in the transmission, Carol called the Avengers for a priority alert, because for those who don't know, Hyperion is like the Marvel version of Superman and a pretty tough opponent. But anyway, Hyperion went on to say, and if his world was a lie, then what does that make him? And if their world is real, then that means he is a lie. But Hyperion claims that he is the real one, so by his logic, the world is the lie. Now he went on to say he has no way to prove either, so he is going to end both by the time they hear this, for Hyperion will be approaching Earth as a significant portion of the speed of light on a collision course. So when he arrives and impacts the Earth, then the differences between what is a lie and what is the truth would no longer be relevant. Now he claims he didn't tell them this to frighten them, for he told them this so that they have time to make peace with whatever they hold important. And on the last page, we see Hyperion hurling towards Earth at top speed, ready to cause all kinds of chaos. So with that said, this issue of the Avengers comes to an end. So with this issue over, I got to say this wasn't the most exciting comic out there, and the offer to Storm was pretty underwhelming, but I do have hope that this comic will pick back up in the next issue. Now I also understand the need of an issue between story arcs to allow the story a chance to breathe, but overall it was pretty slow. And another point I wanted to address is what will the dynamic between the Black Panther and Storm become, since they will be on the same team. And as for Hyperion returning, I have to say that is a very interesting person to be going up against, considering his strength and power. But anyway, if you want to stay in the loop about any individual storyline, then how about you hop over to the playlist section down below or in the link cards above to get all caught up on the Avengers runs. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.